It's been reported recently that in one GAA club, of the 30 players who turned up for training on the Friday night, 6 had a job to go to on Monday morning. And because of emigration, it is now estimated that the GAA are losing around 250 players from clubs each month. Extraordinary figures when you look at them. To give us an insight into the impact that this economic downturn is having at a local level, would you welcome, please, from Tipperary's All-Ireland winning hurling team, Lara Corbett, Conor O'Mahony and Paddy Meyer-Marr. Welcome up. So, Lara, when you finished school, what did you get into? What did you want to do?
I suppose I finished school at 18. For the last 12 years, I went to serve my time to be an electrician. And that was fantastic there for about 10 years. And I suppose the last 2, everything has slowed down. And I suppose what happened for the first 6 months, everything was quiet, work was quiet. And I suppose like everything out there, everyone said it will pick up in time. And after 12 months, it will pick up. Yeah, it's going. I think we're at the bottom of it, is what you kept hearing the whole time. It's nearly there, and you'll be still waiting. I suppose 2 years later, the work still hasn't been, and if anything, things have just got worse.
What are your circumstances now? Are you living out of home, in home, away, or?
Well, I suppose my circumstance at the moment, I suppose, and I'd be ashamed to say, I was 32 weeks ago and I'm still living at home, but I've no complaints. I have a great mother at home anyway, so she looks after me like everyone. So the mother's probably worth about 1,000 a week anyway, so it is fantastic. And I suppose, like, you'd be talking about people emigrating, going to Australia, but like you say, where do you go? Like, so if you do get in a plane and go to Australia now, you come back in 3 or 4 years' time, you're starting from scratch again. So it's very, very hard to know the right way to go about it as regards to, say, from now going forward.
I suppose it'd be worthwhile asking you to give us a kind of typical week in the life of a top-class hurler like yourself. Like, what's involved?
So I suppose what's involved is you have 2 nights in the gym, you have 2 in the field, and then you have 1 the weekend. I suppose a simpler way of putting it is you're putting the gear into the bag 5 times a week, and you're going somewhere that takes about 4 hours a round trip, 5 hours a round trip. So that's really what you're looking at. And I suppose it's very easy for the 3 of us coming up here tonight, like, you know, an employer looking in there, we're saying we have no work, and the first thing he's saying at home drinking his cup of tea is, sure, they don't have time for work. Sure, they're gone 5 days a week. But the one thing about it is, I suppose, what we really bring to it is just say, as regards to team sport, and what we can bring there as just say leadership or everything involved in that. So we're prepared, like, you know, to actually work hard on the field and off the field, and we just think that there's an opening out there. Like, you know, there's a great community in the GAA. Every corner of Ireland that you go to, GAA is strong there, and everyone works together. And I suppose there has to be a way out there of just say bringing the players together.
And are you in work or out of work at the moment?
At the moment, I'm out. At the moment, I'm out of work. Just say the electrical had dried up so much that the work wasn't there.
Cliff.
Yes. So my own situation at the moment is after the All-Ireland, like, you know, and Tipperary had a great year. Yeah. It was fantastic to be involved in it all. But at the end of the day, like, you know, after the All-Ireland the week after, we were still waking up, nowhere to go. And we were just laughing about coming up on the train. Like, there's 2 things an Irish person will always say to you. The first thing is the weather, they'll talk about the weather, and their second one is, well, what are you at now? And you just know that they're going to say what you're at now, and you have your answer at, sure, I'm tipping away, I'm working, yeah. But they know you're not, you know you're not, no, and it's very demoralising.
So you win an All-Ireland medal on a Sunday in front of 80,000 people in Croke Park, and one afternoon the next week you're collecting the dough.
That's exactly what's been happening for the last year and a half for myself personally, yes.
How does that feel, queuing in that for the dough? Like, I know it's difficult for everyone, but just your own.
Well, I suppose like a lot of it is about your mindset and what you actually take from it. Like, you can actually curl up on yourself and you can say, I'm going to stay at home, the work is not there, I'm not going to do anything about it. Or you can be upbeat about, like, I'm not the only one, we're not the only 3. There's plenty of people, like, you know, they could be in the audience tonight or they're at home.
Of course, and watching tonight.
The same situation. Yeah. But I think it's very, very important to be upbeat about it. That's number one. Like, it's very, very to be positive about it. And it's all about a network as well, of meeting people and explaining your situation. Don't ever be ashamed of that you are collecting social welfare or whatever your circumstances are. And I just think that if there's a small bit more positivity out there among people, things will work and things will turn up.
Try and talk the place up a bit. What were you up to until recently, Conor? What's your story?
I suppose like Lara as well, I was involved in the construction industry.
Yeah.
I finished college in 07. Yeah. And I suppose for the last couple of years I've been on the road as a sales representative for various companies or whatever. So obviously just the way things went with the economic downturn that's there at the moment, I suppose I find myself out of work at the moment, really.
You're out of work too, so you're collecting the dough too. And do you find people will approach you? I mean, because you're extremely well known, highly respected for your endeavours on the pitch and so on the field. Do people come up and shoot the breeze and have the crack with you?
Yeah, they do. I suppose they'll definitely come up to you if it's a Monday morning and you're after playing a championship match on a Sunday and you get bet. I suppose they'll be the first to tell you where you went wrong or whatever. So that's one thing that you always get. I suppose you'll have guidance from them and you'll know what you did wrong or whatever. But it is hard, and I suppose you're going down there, but you're meeting people, I suppose, they want to talk to you. I suppose they want to see how Tipperary is going, how is training going, how is Lar Corbett, how is Paddy Maher, how are they going. It is them showing an interest in what we're doing, but it's hard for us, I suppose, to go down every Monday. It's not the ideal scenario for us to be going down every Monday and trying to hurl for Tipperary. I suppose we want to be the best we can be for Tipperary, and for us to do that, I think we need to be happy outside of the hurling field, whether that's to do with work and helping that along the way.
Well, that is the question I'd like to ask you, which is how important is that element of your life to have a job? I mean, do you think that balances out what they call the work life, but in your case, sport balance?
Yeah, well, I think it's very important.
Yeah.
I suppose when you're sitting at home every day, you're thinking, I suppose, about the matches coming up and you're training, and people talk about psychology, and I suppose you can overdo it at times. I suppose, but there's a fine line. I suppose when you're working away, you're concentrating, you do your job. I suppose come 5 o'clock, you switch off, then you go hurling, and I think everything works for each other. I suppose if you're hurling well, you're going to be happy in your job. If you're happy in the job, then you're delighted to go out playing, and then the opposite. Do you know what I mean? If you're happy hurling, you're going to be happy in the job.
You know, there's a bunch of fellas watching tonight who are saying, "Sure, those lads are rolling in it. They got all the sponsorship. I saw them in the ads. They're making loads of money." I mean, does that get thrown at you as well?
That might be just Larry at the moment.
But do you get that? Like, actually, there's sponsorship. They're getting money somewhere other than it, or does that arise?
Well, I suppose, Ryan, just to answer that question, like, just say some of the GAA players, right? So if they are getting sponsorship, but like at the moment, like, we don't have a weekly wage coming in. So if you do get sponsorship and do, like, it's only really covering your day-to-day basis. That, like, sponsorship is fantastic. It's great if you actually have a wage coming in, and actually, we can't go to the bank in the morning and say we have a job if we're looking just say to get for a mortgage or for whatever it is, an extension or a car, whatever it is. It doesn't make a difference. We just don't. We can't fill out the paperwork. Like, you know, you start with your name and address, and then that's it.
That's it. Paddy, what's your situation? You're 22, is that right?
22, yeah.
And you're tell us a little bit about where you're at the moment.
Well, I suppose I was working up until last November of 2010, we'll say, and you know, I was the same as two boys in the building trade, you know, and as we all know, things dried up in that area, you know, and I was really trained to be an apprentice plumber, so I was only halfway through my time, and unfortunately, at the moment, I wasn't able to finish out my time, you know, but...
Are you living at home?
I'm living
at
home, yeah.
With the folks?
Yeah.
And are you making a contribution there, or are you...?
Well, you know, my mother's at home alone, you know, and I'm the eldest son, you know, so I was helping out there. I was getting my weekly wage, you know. As of now, you know, I'm going out to the dole office, same as the lads, you know, and, you know, obviously not here to support two of us, you know, and that is after giving a dent there at home, because my mother is not working either, you know, so it does hurt all assets, you know. I love my mother to bits, you know, and I hope she loves me, but we're kind of getting sick of each other these days, you know, so...
That's very honest of you.
She'd be kind of hoping that I get a job soon enough as well, but, you know, things are bad, and it's the same for everybody, as we said.
Is it demoralising? I mean, is it hard to keep the chin up and, you know, keep training and everything like that when you have to face that situation all the time?
Well, as I said, you know, we are putting in a lot of hours a week training, you know, five nights a week, you say, put the gear into the bag, as we said, but... you know, it is a small bit down. It brings you a bit down, you know. If you're after coming out of the excitement of a big match on a Sunday, you know, you're coming into a Monday, then you're kind of shrugging your shoulders. You know, the rest of your friends looking up for working, you know, and they're asking you, you know, what are you going to do tomorrow? You're shrugging your shoulders. You don't know what to do. Like, you don't want to say it to them because you have nothing to do. You know, it is demoralising a bit, but you know, we're not the only ones in the situation. You know, we said there's thousands of people.
Yeah,
in the country
that's very generous and correct of you to say. I sit here and I speak to a lot of rugby players, you know, and they're the guys and they're joshing and they're having the crack and they're one nicer than the other. But they're making a pretty penny. I mean, they're making a good lot of money and they're performing in arenas that would be pretty much the Aviva's smaller than the one you're performing and winning your medals. And do you ever think, God, jeez, maybe we got into the wrong game? Or I presume you must think about their paychecks sometimes and think, God, we're doing pretty much the same thing, if not something bigger and better.
Yeah, I suppose, Ryan, we always do think about it, and you always think about the soccer player, the rugby player.
And the soccer players, of course, yes.
So, but the situation we're in at the moment, like, you know, that conversation does come up an awful lot, but the situation we're in at the moment, like, I'm 30. I can't go back, I can't change. It's not going to change
for you,
for me now. So it's Friday night here now. It's all about here and now. Like, it's not going to change around the next year or the year after. It's all about here now. It's Friday now, Monday morning. What can I do to change? Like, it's really just it comes back down to, I suppose you only have to come back down as an individual. What can you do to change for yourself?
Would you like to be taking home a big paycheck for playing the sport that you love and winning the medals that you win?
Yeah, I suppose it's what everyone wants to do is to get paid for what they love doing. But I suppose the GAA is an amateur organisation. I suppose it's always going to be an amateur organisation, I suppose. And it's in Ireland where it's key, I suppose. You look at the rugby and the soccer, it's international. They have the money to, I suppose, to pay these players. But as now, the GAA is an amateur organisation, and I suppose we just have to deal with it that way.
Yeah, would you prefer it not to be an amateur association?
Well, I suppose we'd all love to get a few pounds for what we do and we love doing or whatever, but I suppose at the end of the day it is an amateur organisation and it is going to stay that way.
Do you think there might be a compromise where they could see their way to maybe looking after you a bit?
Well, Ryan, we'd love you working on that there because you're doing very well at the moment there, so you might get onto the GAA there. But
I just find it very peculiar.
Yeah.
And again, you know, you guys are at the heart of it. I'm not. I'm just punter to asking the questions. But just that, I just feel that the contrast of Croke Park, 80,000 people cheering on winning medals, which, like, you're like the Cuchulainn of our time, and the next day you're collecting the dole. I think that's wrong.
Well, Ryan, in fairness, you know, if we did take brought the money into the amateur game, you know, it might take the heat off it, you know, because the games are so, you know, there's like 5 or 6 games a year, like, so, you know, if it was professional, played it week in, week out, maybe it could take the interest out of it a bit. So, you know, the game is, hurling and football is at the top at the moment, you know, so...
It's a fair point, and it's an argument that goes on. The people will say that the amateur element sanctifies the purity of the game, and on it goes. But sure, look, we'll do that later over a beer. But in the meantime, have any of you thought about the nuclear option of emigration, or are you all sticking around?
I suppose it's something that has popped up a lot lately. I suppose we're hurling for Tipperary and we're lucky to get the chance to hurl for Tipperary, and I suppose at the moment we want to hurl for Tipperary because it only starts at a certain age and it finishes at a certain age, and I suppose we had the opportunity to hurl for Tipperary and we want to give Tipperary the best of ourselves for the cause or whatever. But obviously at the end of the day, if things don't work out down the line, we have to definitely think about it.
Okay, it'd be tragic if it comes. Now let's go into the audience, and we have Conor Coonahan, is the manager of Cork's senior football team. Conor, how are you?
That's about
it. Listening to the lads, is it easy listening, difficult listening?
Yeah, it is. I suppose it's very similar, not alone in Tipperary, but in Cork and I suppose every county. And I suppose, like the lads, I sympathise with everyone that's unemployed because it's a very difficult place to be. You know, people talk to me during the year before big games and they talked about pressure. But, you know, I said to people, pressure is about getting up on a Monday morning and maybe not having a job to go to. You might have a mortgage or something like that. That's when real pressure is. And I think a lot of people in the country that are employed still don't appreciate that.
Precisely. And what about the lads that you see, whether it's in Cork or Tip, and how important is that the job in terms of morale, motivation, these things?
Oh yeah, I think it's critical. You know, people, everybody, most of the squad, you know, are working with the exception maybe 4 or 5 fellas. You know, it's good for their mind. You know, they're working 9 to 5. You talk about the amateur game. You know, the difference between amateur and professional is, you know, the amateur, once he loses the match on Sunday, he has a job to go on Monday, so he has some other focus. But, you know, the professional loses the match, he's got to go back training the following day. But our guys don't have it, some of them don't have a job to go.
Do you think that the economic situation has thrown up that debate again, the one we were chatting away there about the professionalism and about giving the guys the fact that, you know, the rugby boys and can play Viva, the soccer boys can play Viva and take in humongous paychecks. These guys are collecting the dole on the Monday, having entertained the masses on a Sunday afternoon, 80,000 people. I mean, is that debate up for grabs again, do you think?
Well, I suppose, look, I mean, I haven't looked in detail at the figures, but in relation to the 2 other major sports, would be soccer and rugby, a lot of their money is coming through TV revenue, and that's not available to the GAA. I suppose the GAA has achieved an awful lot within the country in terms of the development of facilities through every parish and every rural place in Ireland. And, you know, those facilities stand because people haven't been paid. Now, it's a catch-22.
It's a catch-22. Well, when they start disappearing off to Perth and to London, you wonder, is there an imbalance in the force?
There's a certain challenge there at this point in time, but, you know, hopefully we can maintain the amateur status. But equally, we must look after players.
And be cognizant of their needs, I
Absolutely.
suppose. Peter Fitzpatrick, good evening to you, of course, Louth's senior football manager. The situation in Louth at the moment is what, exactly?
Well, we got to our first Leinster final in 53 years there last year.
Yes, controversial as it was, yes. Yeah.
And after the game, we had 10 players that had no employment.